that in 11th five-year plan, the India is spending in the range of around 6.5 to 7.5% of the GDP into the infrastructure. But in the 10th five-year plan, we were in the range of 5 to 6%. So there has been increment in the infrastructure spend by the government. But if you compare this investment as compared to some of the Southeast Asian countries, they are spending in the range of 10 to 13%. So there is a long way to go, and especially there is a lot of deficiencies in the Indian infrastructure. This is a planned funding pattern in infrastructure. So you can see the 10th plan, 11th plan, and the 12th plan. In 12th plan, which is from 2012 to 2017, so roughly we are talking about $1 trillion investment in the infrastructure arena, whereas 50% has to come from the private sector. So therefore, it is very, very important to understand the dynamics in the financing market. So from where this 50% need to come on that. So infrastructure, if we are talking about $1 trillion, 50% from private sector. And if you look at the bank credit in the infrastructure sector, which was around 2.2% in the financial year 2001, after 10 years in 2011, it has reached to the level of 13.5%. So clearly it is an indication that in infrastructure development, the banks have played a very vital role in the last 10 years. Especially if you look at the numbers, $1 trillion, and the equity requirement in next 5 years would be in the range of $150 billion, and the debt requirement will be $350 billion. So these are very, very large numbers. So people have their own estimates, and people have their own, ideas whether this is achievable or not. So I say if you take 50% of that is achievable, even then it is a very big number. So challenges, as I look after the infrastructure, in fact my entire career has been in infrastructure, so I can speak more on that. So construction is actually defined as the single largest, riskiest element in the infrastructure development. And these are some of the areas of concern in the construction side. Land acquisition delays are very common. So you might have read newspapers and news channels. So wherever new highway or new port or the new airports need to be developed, there is a requirement of a lot of land bank over there. And due to Indian style of land acquisition, it creates a lot of difficulty, troubles, and all that. So these are land acquisition is still one of the very important element area of concern in the construction phase. The cost overrun and time. Especially when we are talking about the PPP, the cost of capital is very high in the Indian market. And any cost overrun will directly flow to the sponsors on that. Approval from the competent authority, we have seen there are multiple level of authorities, and there is no clear policy or clear guidelines. There is no single window clearance system. So this is one of the another area of concern. Dispute resolution infrastructure is not very effective due to land acquisition issues, many delays in the approval. The project lands in the a kind of disputed territory. So as a result, the DRB system is there, the arbitration, and literally every single arbitration award is challenged with the High Court. And you are aware that our Indian court system takes a very long time. And once the matter is landed in the court, it takes 3 years to 10 years. So really the sanctity of the investment is lost in that. Increasing financing cost. So if any increment is there in the financing cost, especially the rise in the commodity prices, rise in the steel price, rise in the cement, rise in the bitumen and other ingredients, but especially the PPP contracts are fixed contracts, so you have no mechanism to recover the escalation on that. So this is another area of concern in the potentially inflationary economy like India. The last bullet, I think it is very, very important from the human resources point of view. As per the estimates, 13 million workers enter into the market every year, but only 3 million receive the training. So there is a large gap, and it is a gap between you have the certification, but you are not employable in the industry. Because our ITI and other areas literally have kind of a disconnected from the industry. So because their certification is more theoretical based rather than the practical based. In the infrastructure side, these are the another structural issue, because majority of companies try to operate through the holding company, and holding company has the various SPVs, special purpose vehicles. And when they need to pass the dividends, so every transaction there is a dividend distribution tax. So therefore, entire transaction is not very tax friendly. which I think many forums are in the process of discussing with the concerned ministries and all that. And these are one of the reasons that the foreign investment in the infrastructure. So when they come to India, they first look at the exit route. What is the exit route? So how to exit after making the money and all that. So these are the tax-related issues we need to, sort out. So these are the, especially the PPP concession business, or you call it the BOT or DBFOT kind of business. So these two bars suggest that the blue line is basically the average concession period, and the red line is the average tenure of the debt. What happens in the other countries, the debt tenure is in the range of, say, 80 to 90% of the tenure of the project. But here it's roughly 40-50%. It means you have to struggle with the cash flow issues because entire cost is amortized in the 50% time of the project. And after mid of the concessions, you don't know what will be the rate of interest, so how it will be refinanced. So there is a very serious risk running by the private company, those who are entering into the concession business. These are the financing, existing landscape as far as the infrastructure finance is concerned. So you have 5 columns. You have conventional bank financing, where the public sector banks, private banks, structured products are there. Then infrastructure, NBFC, couple of companies, including us. Then special funding vehicles like PFC, REC, NABARD, and takeout financing. Recently, India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited has been formed by the central government. And the idea is they can, replace the lender once the construction is over, because construction is perceived as the single largest, riskiest element or riskiest time in the entire life cycle of the project. But once the construction is over, the risk profile of the project goes down. And there could be a possibility that a different kind of fund, which has a lower rate of interest and a longer tenure, can replace the original lender. So that is the basic concept of the takeout financing, where IIFCL is now taking shape on that. And besides that, other options, international funding, including ECB, FIs, and bonds. So these are the another financial challenges in the infrastructure, like sovereign credit rating of the India is currently at BBB minus as per S&P, and it actually limits the investment from the foreign funds. The downward side of the credit rating, you have the higher rate of interest is expected from the international market. Currently, as per the regulation, the pension funds and insurance funds are not allowed to participate in the infrastructure, because they are allowed only in the AA or AAA rated projects or the companies. Typically, the infrastructure SPVs are BB or BBB rated. So as per the rating differentiation, the pension funds and insurance funds are not allowed. But pension funds and insurance funds sitting in a very large pool of money. If this money can be channelized into the mainstream infrastructure, that will be a game changer in the Indian market. So to provide a solution to that, IIFCL has come up with a new idea for credit enhancement mechanism. If the government agency can take an equity position or a debt position in any SPV, then its credit rating goes up. And if it is reached at AA level, then it will be in a position to access the long-term funds like insurance funds and pension funds. So this is the area. I think in next 2 to 3 years, you will see something is happening in that. Underdeveloped corporate bonds, if you see the world over, especially the developed countries, the infrastructure was not created by using banks' money. It was created using very strong bond market backed by the government. In fact, the famous rail tunnel between UK and France, there is a bond of 75 years. So if you have such long-term financing availability, so that will be really a boost for the infrastructure project. So currently in India, the bond market is extremely big. It is contributing less than 1% of the total infrastructure funding. And if you look at the trends in the bank lending, over 80% of the infra projects financed by the public sector banks. And there has been an asset liability mismatch, because the deposits in the bank are, say, 3 year, 5 year. But the tenure of the loan is required for 10 year or 15 year, because the concession period is going up to 30 years. So therefore, the bank says that because the deposits are short term, they have a difficulty in lending the money for a quite long time. So there is an asset liability mismatch between the bank. So, and there is a sectoral limit in each bank. And generally, it is defined as 10%, say 10% of incremental asset generation on year-on-year basis. So there is a sectoral limit posed by the RBI onto the banks. So most of the banks are reaching their exposure limit on that. So the question coming back, if we look at the numbers for the 12th five-year plan, we are talking about the $1 trillion, 50% need to come from the private sector. So the important question is from where the money will be coming. So there's a clear thinking and reform is required to achieve those kind of targets. And floating interest loans with a short reset period. I think we have seen there has been a significant number of repo rate changes and CRR cut and all that. So for the past 5 years there has been a rising trend in the interest rate. PPP concessions are fixed, and whatever loan you are taking from the banks, these are floating. So you don't know what will be the final cost of finance.